Ever find yourself wondering if there's really, you know, hard evidence for stories from literally thousands of years ago?
Mm-hmm.
Well, get this. Today we're going to be digging into like the world of archaeology, right?
Okay.
And we'll be looking at how it intersects with the Bible. We're
Hmm.
talking about actual discoveries
Okay.
that shed light on like the historical backdrop of these ancient texts. It's like, we're going on an adventure to uncover God's hidden treasures.
Hmm.
And I'm not talking about like actual gold or jewels here, although they'd be pretty cool.
Right.
I'm talking about these archaeological finds that, and this is the amazing part, actually seem to line up with accounts you find in the Bible.
Yeah.
Now, I know a lot of people see the Bible as like this source of faith,
Yeah.
and moral guidance, which fair enough.
Right.
But its historical accuracy, that's something that's been, well, debated, to say the least.
Oh, absolutely. And for a long time, there was like a lot of skepticism surrounding, whether the Bible was historically accurate, especially when it came to some of the specific places and kingdoms that are mentioned in there.
Yeah, yeah. And you can kind of understand why, right?
Mm-hmm.
Take Jericho, for example.
Yeah.
The walls crumbling down dramatically like that.
Right.
Was that a real event or just like some kind of allegorical story?
A lot of people saw that and thought, okay, that's got to be a myth, right?
So for a while there, it was kind of dismissed as just that, a myth.
Yeah.
But then archaeology really kind of flipped the script.
It did. Excavations actually uncovered a real city, a real Jericho. And guess what they found? The walls showed signs of a sudden, like, dramatic collapse, just like it describes in the Bible.
Well, hold on. So you're saying they found actual evidence that those walls came tumbling down.
Yeah, it's these kinds of discoveries that make us, well, they force us to rethink what we label as myth versus what might actually be, historical events that were like lost to time. It challenges everything we thought we knew about the past.
It's like finding, I don't know, a missing puzzle piece, and then suddenly the whole picture snaps into
Eh,
focus.
Exactly. A perfect analogy.
So where do we go from there? We've got these walls, but like, what else?
Well, for years, let's take the lineage of King David, for example.
Private,
A really central figure in all those biblical narratives.
right?
And for the longest time, evidence for his dynasty, it pretty much came only from the Bible itself.
Oh, okay. So you're saying there wasn't much outside the Bible to back it up.
Exactly.
Okay, but then didn't they find something called the Tel Dan inscription?
They did, yeah, back in 1993. This inscription, it's ancient, and it mentions, get this, the House of David. Not just David, but his whole line, his dynasty.
Well, hold on. So it's like having confirmation from outside the Bible?
Right. Absolutely. It's a huge deal because it backs up what the Bible says. And not only that, this inscription, along with some other findings about King David and his reign, they give us like a much richer picture, right?
Okay.
It's not just that he existed, but we learn about his influence, the world he lived in, his kingdom.
So we're going deeper than just checking a box. Yep, he was real. We're understanding the whole context.
Precisely. It's about filling in those gaps and using these discoveries to understand the historical setting, the backdrop for these stories, whether you approach them from a faith perspective or just from a historical curiosity.
So it's not about like proving or disproving the Bible.
No.
It's about using these finds to say, okay, this is the world these stories emerged from.
Exactly. It gives us a clearer lens, right? Even if we're still piecing everything together.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So are there other discoveries that like help us understand that world, the world of the Bible a little bit better? Because, you mentioned piecing things together.
You've got the Dead Sea Scrolls. Now, these ancient texts, they don't necessarily confirm like specific events from the Bible per se, but they offer something even more significant, I think. A window into the actual beliefs and practices, even the debates within Jewish communities way back, like around the time the New Testament was being written.
Really? So it's like we can eavesdrop on their conversations from centuries ago.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's incredible.
We can gain insight into how they interpreted religious texts, their social structures, all of that.
So it's like finding like a treasure trove of like behind the scenes info.
Yeah.
It really adds another dimension, another layer to our understanding of the historical context of the Bible.
Absolutely. And the scrolls, they reveal some really interesting things.
Like what?
Well, they show that within ancient Judaism, there was a whole spectrum of beliefs and practices.
Oh, interesting.
It wasn't a monolith, right? You have different groups, different interpretations. We're talking about the world where the events of the New Testament were happening, and it was a diverse place.
So, like, even back then, it wasn't just one size fits all when it came to faith.
Exactly.
That's fascinating. It really makes you think about how archaeology can kind of like shake up our assumptions, even about stuff that seems, I don't know, insignificant at first glance.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look at the city of Jaffa.
Jaffa, okay.
Yeah, it gets a mention in the Bible, but nobody really thought it was that important.
Right.
But get this, recent digs, they've totally changed how we see this place, this ancient city.
Okay, so what'd they find?
Well, first of all, it turns out Jaffa was way bigger than anyone expected.
Really?
Yeah, and way more developed. We're talking serious fortifications, like the city planning was complex, and they found evidence of a really, thriving culture there.
So not just some, like, tiny village then?
No, not at all. This was a major urban center. And that has some big implications.
Like what? What do you mean?
Well, for one thing, Jaffa was part of the Kingdom of Judah. And what this tells us is that Judah, that whole kingdom, was likely a lot more powerful, a lot more advanced than scholars used to think.
Wow. So this one city, it's challenging what we thought we knew about a whole kingdom.
That's right. And it shows you how our modern ideas of what's insignificant, they might not mean much when you're looking at the past.
Huh. Yeah, that's a good point.
It's all about perspective. And Jaffa, it gets even more interesting because aside from its size, right, the stuff they dug up, the artifacts, they suggest a very particular cultural identity. It's possible these people, they saw themselves as pretty distinct, especially compared to their neighbors, the Philistines.
Oh, wow. So this one city, it's shaking things up in terms of how we see the politics, the culture, even the identity of this whole region way back then.
Yeah. And it highlights something really important. Archaeology, it can illuminate all the complexities of these ancient societies in a way that, honestly, written records often can't. Well, like we've been saying, those records, they only tell part of the story. Jaffa makes us reconsider the balance of power, right?
Okay.
How did these different cultures mix? How did they shape each other? Even the very idea of what it meant to be part of those kingdoms back then, we have to rethink that.
It's like we're watching history being rewritten as these discoveries are made.
Exactly. And this city, it was almost a footnote, right? But now it's front and center when we're trying to understand the past.
And there's just one example.
Right. And it shows how dynamic archaeology is.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't some dusty old field. It's alive. As we uncover new stuff, our understanding changes.
So far, we've gone from this city, Jericho, that people thought was a myth,
Right.
to a king, King David, whose whole dynasty is backed up by evidence outside the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And now we've got this, like, seemingly unimportant city, Jaffa, turning our ideas about a whole kingdom upside down. It's amazing to think about how much we're still learning about the past.
And we've really only just scratched the surface. Every time they dig, every time they analyze an artifact, it has the potential to change everything we thought we knew, not just about, the Bible, but about human civilization, period.
Yeah, it really makes you think all these archaeological discoveries, they're not just about, like, digging up old stuff. It's about how we see history. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like we were saying, Jericho, that city used to be thought of as, like, pure myth. And now we're finding out, no, it was a real place. And what's more, the history, it lines up with what's in the Bible, which is kind of wild when you think about it.
Yeah, and don't forget the Tel Dan inscription.
Right.
I mean, talk about confirmation.
Exactly.
Here we have proof, solid evidence from outside the Bible, that King David's dynasty, it wasn't just a story.
It makes you wonder if the people who doubted it ever feel like, I don't know, silly.
Well, that's the thing about science and discovery, right? It's all about constantly challenging what we think we know.
Which brings us to Jaffa.
Jaffa, yeah.
The city that, let's be honest, most people probably hadn't even heard of. And yet here it is, changing how we view a whole kingdom, just because of what archaeology is uncovering.
See, that's what I love about this field. It's full of surprises.
It really is. You start digging, and who knows what you're going to find.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it so exciting. Who knows what other hidden treasures, to use your term, are out there just waiting to be found.
Yeah, like, could there be other cities like Jaffa just waiting to rewrite the history books?
It's entirely possible.
It's like we've only scratched the surface.
We've barely begun to uncover the secrets of the past.
Makes you think, If these discoveries can change our understanding of stories and figures we thought we knew so well,
Right.
what else might be out there? What other pieces of the puzzle are we missing?
That's the beauty of it. We don't know. And the best part is it isn't just for like biblical scholars or even historians. These discoveries, they have the power to fascinate anyone who's ever looked at the night sky and wondered about where we came from.
It's about human curiosity,
Yeah,
plain and simple.
exactly.
About that desire to learn, to explore, to understand our place in the grand scheme of things. And archaeology, it's a powerful tool for that, that's for sure.
It is.
So we may not find actual treasure chests filled
Yeah.
with gold and jewels, but these God's hidden treasures, as we've been calling them, these archaeological finds, they're just as valuable, I think, because they shed light on who we are, where we came from,
It's about connecting with the past.
and realizing that history, it's not just some fixed, dead thing.
Right.
It's a conversation, it's ongoing. And these discoveries, they add to that conversation in such a profound way. That's what I find so amazing.
Me too.
So to wrap things up, next time you're reading something, anything, whether it's the Bible or some other ancient text or even, a history book from a few hundred years ago, just remember there's always more to the story. Keep an open mind, be curious, and never ever underestimate what archaeology can teach us about ourselves, about our world. Because as we've seen, sometimes the most incredible treasures are the ones we find buried in the past.